Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses. In this episode, we're going to take you through season readiness of the Raven R10 and preventative maintenance.
Hi, this is Tim and Joel. Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses,
A podcast about the outdoors, hunting,
and being a steward of the land. Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses. As Tim stated earlier in the intro, we're going to be talking about the Raven R10 Crossbow, and more importantly, maintenance required. We're in the off-season of deer season, so we're going to call it off-season maintenance, but it really should be maintenance before the season, during the season, and then after the season. So just walk you through this, and I would encourage you to visit their website. We did that in our pre-work, and they do a fantastic job on the Raven website of going through these points that we're going to make, and actually have some videos on some of them. So go from there.
Yeah.
Tim, should we get into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
And then we'll share some of our learnings on this, because we've had some unfortunate learnings on some of these, and if you've had these bows or crossbows, you're going to run into some of these things. But first and foremost, number one thing is, you want to inspect and look for loose parts. Specifically your cams. These cams get knocked around. They're pretty brittle. There's a lot going on these cams, so look for nicks, loose bolts, loose nuts, etc. on this, not only at the cams but throughout the whole mechanism. Again, you're cocking and decocking this thing, so there's quite a few moving parts under a lot of torque.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, I mean, you're under so much torque, and in this case, I had, during one of my preseason inspections, I found one of my cams had a small nick in it. Do I think it was going to cut the string? No. But it's under such torque, it's just too dangerous to not take the next step. So I had it replaced, and the customer service from Raven was so good. They actually, this was a 3-year-old bow at the time, and they replaced the cam free of charge. All I had to do was pay for labor.
Stay around the strings. So Raven recommends every 2 years or 400 shots, you should be replacing your strings. And they also recommend on their websites that you should be waxing it, but only the bare string part of it. And you should be looking for frails or cuts or anything on these strings. If the strings look anywhere not normal, you really should be looking at replacing them. Again, going back to that torque and safety thing. And again, they really stress, keep away from this, they are calling it the centerpiece, which is where the arrow actually connects with the string and goes into the trigger mechanism. They're recommending no wax, don't put anything in that area. They're afraid that they're going to gum up your trigger.
And anything that you should be using should be a non-wax solution. So Raven has their own, and then there's also a scorpion venom that you can purchase. And to put on all of these strings. Now I would tell you that's a practice I have not done, but I will since start to do that. The other thing is it also has a cold weather operation, to where they recommend during cold weather operation only below 32 degrees, is that during that center rest you just lightly dab in before you hunt that scorpion venom.
Let it dry.
Yeah, and let it dry.
Awesome.
So then the next thing is the arrow rests. And so right here you've got this arrow rest to where you have 2 Teflon wheels, and these are natural wear points from friction from your arrow, and they can either become deformed or get some flat spots in them. And so they recommend, depending on how much you shoot, those should be replaced on a regular basis with no time limit on it. But that's something you should inspect. These here are now worn, and we're going to actually replace those with some. They've come out with an improved arrow rest, which is now stainless steel ball bearings, and that's what I'll do. And that's about $90, not counting shipping.
But up until us doing some investigation on that end, and we actually got a comment from one of our viewers on the channel, recommended looking at those, and by golly, we looked at yours and
Spot on.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the importance of these viewer comments. I mean, I learned just as much if not more, from the viewer comments than you guys probably get from our videos. So I appreciate that very much. Joel, what else?
We talked about wax on the strings, and especially on the centerpiece, and also using non-wax on that centerpiece, but during cold weather. You know, the thing I do every year is it's really easy to leave your scope light on, and you use your scope. I use my scope light. I just have a set time of the day. If I'm out in my tree stand at 4 o'clock, I turn my light on.
I do the same thing.
And then hopefully I remember at the end of the day to turn it off, which doesn't always happen. So it's a good time to check your batteries on your scope. And if you haven't replaced them, you know, I would say every year or 2 years, you're probably on borrowed time. And I would replace them.
I buy those bubble packs from those bubble packs of 2030. They're called CR 2032 batteries. There's a reason I remember that. And just buy yourself and have them on hand, because that's what they're going to take, and it's super hard to remember.
I keep them in my aero case, you know, the case that you buy with this, and I just keep a pack of those in there all the time, because you do forget a lot. And
another thing to check is making sure before season is that you've sighted in your scope, and also that your scope rings and your mounts are all tight. So I would say almost every year, I sight it in, and probably every other year I have to make some sort of an adjustment. Now, it could be because of my scope rests or my arrow rests after seeing that, but I always had to make some sort of adjustment.
yeah, and I would say, and I think we learned this from practical experience also, is double check your speed. There's a speed setting on your scope, and if that gets notched one way or the other, either higher or lower, when you're sighting this in, your arrow's going to be low or it's going to be high, and it's always going to be high, no matter what distance you're going to be shooting at, high or low, if your speed is not correct.
Correct.
So if you do sight it in and you're shooting your arrow high, you know, right on the bullseye, but high or low, check your speed first, make sure that that's set, and maybe make an adjustment there and shoot another arrow. And then go out distance wise, because once it's locked in, it will adjust accordingly by distance.
Yep. Making sure, well, actually your nocks, tips, and flights. Before you're going out hunting, making sure the tips, just like if you're bow hunting on anything else, but again, lots of torque, making sure your nocks are tight, they're not worn, because you want this safety release to be functioning properly, and worn nocks can impact its operation. Also making sure that your tips are tight, and that your flights aren't curled. If your flights are curled, they recommend hot water, running in hot water to get those flights all trued up. And then lastly, just making sure that the white flight on your Raven arrow is on the pointed down position, so that that doesn't get ripped off when you're shooting it.
And I would, from practical experience, from my practical experience this year, I did not inspect my nocks, and the nocks were in the correct position, but I had a loose nock. And when I pulled the arrow out, the nock stayed in the trigger mechanism without me knowing about it. And then when I went out to hunt the next time, you know, I couldn't put the arrow in, so I had to deal with that ongoing. So when you're checking your nocks, look for wear. Look for correct position, but also if they're loose, now's the time to glue them in.
Yeah, I've had that same thing happen.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to do. That's my list, Timbo.
That's my list as well.
Again, we'd recommend you go out on the website. They're not recommending, you know, any particular lubrication points or anything like that. I think the concern is freezing up and getting dust in there and jamming and contaminants and you know, very precise machine here that we're dealing with in the elements, right? So take a look at that and educate yourself. You owe it to yourself and your crossbow to do that. So with that, Tim, anything else?
Nope.
Well, until next time, be safe, have fun, and get outdoors.
Desperado, sitting in a old Monte Carlo, a man whose heart is hollow.